Bea Chu is a YouTuber, tech enthusiast, sound designer, and filmmaker. She has set her career towards guiding the next generation of DIY filmmakers. Currently residing in Manila, Philippines, she's a lactose-intolerant ice latte addict. Lord Jesus. I originally ran across her on Instagram and I loved her personality and great content tips, but what really stood out to me was her unique vibe. I mean, check this out.
Hey guys, I'm Bea Chu, and I create educational and entertaining content around film, audio, and tech. And these are my two dogs.
And it's totally working. Hundreds of thousands of people are tuned in to see what Bea is up to. I had her on the show today to talk about how to develop a strong brand for your short form content, tips on editing and how to achieve better sound quality in your videos, and how in the world we improve production quality without losing relatability. Y'all are in for a treat. This is Bea Chu.
What we're told in content creation courses and all these gurus, they're like, get to the point. That first 3 seconds is everything, the hook. And you're like, literally, you're like, what's up, y'all? Is that a branding thing, or have you learned something about hooks that we don't know?
When you find yourself, you're having a hard time to put out a piece of content, then put parameters such as
what is the most unconventional, weird ass, against the grain thing that you believe with all of your heart when it comes to content creation that most people would disagree with you about?
it's
Bea Chu on the show today. I was just telling her that I had a friend reach out and say, look at this content. This is so good. I want my content to look like Bea's content. And when I went over to Instagram, I was already following you. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be a sneaky gal and slide into the DMs and get you on this show so I can pick your brain about your story, your approach to content. I think you have a very unconventional vibe and it's working and people are relating to it. I think it's going to be really refreshing for folks to hear about how you approach content, especially if they don't feel like they have that traditional vibe about them, because I think you're breaking a lot of mold and breaking a lot of rules. And I'll tell you what those are here in a little bit that I'm seeing, and you tell me if I'm wrong on it. But big ass introduction. Bea, thank you for jumping on today.
Thank you for having me. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. So I scrolled back to about 7 years ago. You made your first vlog. It was in June.
Oh my gosh.
It was in June.
Yeah.
We're recording this in June, literally 7 years ago. And you mentioned that Casey Neistat, a couple other people were influential on you to start making content. What were you doing 7 years ago? Was the plan to get online and make content, or were you wanting to go the traditional media route, or were you doing something completely different? What were you doing when you first started this journey?
I was actually a sound engineer for theater shows, Broadway stuff, here in the Philippines. And I really wanted to vlog. I liked the idea of being a content creator. Back then, I think I had, or at least my mindset was similar to how a lot of people probably got into content creation. It was based on the idea that, oh, I would love to have a lot of followers. Also the free
I
stuff.
love that you're real.
No, I mean, because that's
real.
honestly, it's like, I won't hide it. That's where it started. I was like, wow, that must be the life, you know, flying here and there and just making videos. I was like, I want to do that too. But then I also quickly realized that that wasn't sustainable. And if numbers were, or at least like following was what you were chasing after, as well as, you know, for lack of better term, I guess like clout, then it's not sustainable. And I learned that very quick. And so it was hard for me to be consistent. And there was a lot of things that I learned along the way up until like 2020.
Sound engineer for Broadway shows. That means, tell me I'm wrong, that's when you not only are checking like the sound and making sure it's up to par, but you're also engineering like an experience through sound. So like crackling leaves or birds in the background. Y'all are like formulating the entire sound experience. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. But so we have like sound designers for that. I'm more on like the technical one, so they design everything, and then I make sure it's all relatively balanced during the live show.
Okay, so tell me if I'm wrong on this. This is a total assumption, right? what I'm thinking when you said, all right, you had this really technical, very detailed job, and then you go in to make your own content, and then you said that it was hard for you to be consistent. Were you being like a perfectionist with your content because of your background, or is that just Heather assuming some shit?
No, it's pretty on point. I've been like a perfectionist pretty much with a lot of the things that I try to put out.
Yeah.
And it's, I wouldn't say that I had enough of the skills to be able to make good content, at least to the taste that I wanted it to be, based on the people that I was following back then. But definitely, yeah, being a perfectionist, and it was a lot of the comparing, definitely.
Yeah, it's hard. You said you learned a lot up until 2020. What were you referencing there?
So 2020 was when the pandemic hit. I ran out of an excuse for saying that, oh, I can't make content because I'm busy at work, because everybody was home, right? And that was when I made a piece of content and it went viral. And then that kind of like clicked for me. And everything that I went through since I started putting up like my first vlog up until that point, that was when it was like, oh, that's why I was doing it wrong. I mean, or at least that was like a light bulb moment wherein, okay, I've been doing it wrong all the while, which is why I wasn't growing and I wasn't happy and I wasn't being consistent at all. Not to say I'm consistent now. What I was doing wrong was the foundation of why. It was the why, pretty much.
Really?
Yeah, because like I said, when I was starting out then, it was because I wanted the lifestyle of what I thought a creator had. And I also wanted just to make cool things. But I didn't want to, or at least subconsciously, now that I look back, it was probably I didn't want to put in the work to get to that point. It was like a lot of it was shortcuts, I guess.
Give me an example. What would be like a shortcut you're referring to?
Right. So it's rooted in comparison. So for example, back then I was watching like Casey Neistat, right? And he was making videos every single day for like the daily vlogs. And then I was also watching Peter McKinnon, and he was making these really badass like cinematic videos. And I'm like, I want to be able to do those. But I didn't put in the amount of work that they probably put in, because I didn't really grasp how intense like or how much goes into content creation. And I always thought like, just turn on the camera and it should look like that. Right? But it never does. And I would usually stop there and I'd be like, oh well, it just doesn't look like that. I didn't put in enough hours to be like, okay, well then maybe they took the time to learn about this, about lighting. They took the time to learn about gear, about the camera, the lenses, and you know, all of these things that people get through experience. So I was looking for the shortcut of like, okay, just like tell me how it works and how it make it look good. So yeah.
So that first viral piece that you referred to, was that a product of a lot more time and you're like, oh, this is what it's actually going to take for something to pop?
Ironically, no. That viral
That was the
piece,
easiest video.
yeah, it was, and I that video was like a light bulb moment for me after it went viral, because I was like, it doesn't make sense that it did.
What
Because
was it?
it was a DIY lapel mic video. Yeah,
That makes
and
sense that went viral. That makes a lot of sense. You just telling me the topic.
yeah, but I didn't know that back then. Like now, I'm pretty sure after everything, like analyzing everything, I know now also like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, it definitely made sense that it would gain traction. But back then, I only did that video because I had friends who were in the theater industry who I was seeing online, like posting videos of them singing, because nobody, like everyone was inside, right? And then they would have headsets that one was plugged into the ear and then the other one is just like down there, but that was the one with the microphone. And I'm like, of course you don't sound great because it has to be right there by your mouth. And then for me, I took for granted the fact, like I thought it was, I mean, like, it's common knowledge. How can people not know this, right? And so I made a video very quickly, just whipped out my phone, and then I filmed that video because I was like, guys, just do this. Okay, do this instead of doing this. And then I didn't think much of it. The most thinking that I did was like, oh, you know what? Because back then TikTok was populated with all like the dance stuff. And I'm like, I'm not a dancer, so I don't find a need to make a TikTok account. But I like the fact that there was a watermark of the username. I was like, I want that. So I made an account on TikTok just to upload the video, just so that I didn't need to manually put in my username that changes from this part to this part. And yeah, that's the only reason why I made a TikTok video, just to download that, have the watermark, and then I uploaded it to Facebook. And apparently it was the topic and the fact that it was on TikTok, those two combined, that made it do well. Plus the fact that for some reason, some people thought I was mad. But yeah.
Thought you were mad?
Yeah. I didn't get it too. I'm like, but apparently there's like a split between the audience. One is like, wow, I didn't know that you could do that. Of course you could do that. It's so simple. And then the other one is like, why are you mad? Why are you getting mad at me? And I'm just like, okay.
It's so funny. Like I've experienced that too, where stuff that has gone viral, you think it goes viral because of the content, and then I start getting into the DM or the comments, and it's like people are arguing over something that I had no idea. At the Connor Price one, that's like one of my biggest videos, people are literally fighting in there about women's rights, and I'm like, what? Because it's something one-off stupid thing I said, but hey, whatever, dude, it makes it pop. So here's what I'm getting from you. You said earlier, you talked about not understanding that if you wanted to be a content creator, how much work it actually is. And it's something that is really a full-time job, and investing in learning all these different things. And it's not by accident people pop. The other thing that you said that I thought was really, really powerful is you said, I think this is called is it the knowledge bias or something like that? There's a term for it, where the thing that comes so simple for you that you think everybody knows is like crazy knowledge for most people. And you had this experience with sound design. You're like, yo, just put the microphone up to your freaking face. And people are like, what? So those are really two good pieces of advice, I think, for creators. What else over just high level? And then we'll get into some nitty gritty stuff, but high level, I know you said you still struggle with consistency now, but you're putting out consistent content. It's really good. It's connecting with people. Your following has just popped. You're over 200,000 followers on Instagram. Congratulations. That's not easy to do. Are you doing this full time now? What has shifted and switched over the past few years?
So over the past few years, I guess for the most part, it is full time at this point. Everything.
Congrats.
Thank you. It's still a struggle though, but there's a lot more to it. But life of a content creator, right? But for the most part, it has been full time, mostly brand deals, but I also I teach a course, like a content creation course under NAS Academy. And I also help and do like at least in-person workshops here in the Philippines. So content creation workshops.
Is it focused on sound, or what's the primary focus on those courses?
Mostly anything content creation related. So the technical aspects of content creation, storytelling, script writing, ideation, and all that stuff. So yeah, all of those phases. So I actually deviated from 2020. I deviated from focusing on audio to just like content creation as a whole, and being a creator and highlighting branding. Because one of the things that I realized over the course of the past few years is that is one of the biggest pain points for content creators, is that they kind of put branding as, or it's like either it's overwhelming for them to get into branding, or they don't really think about it. But I've seen so many people disregard that or make it an afterthought, but it should be like the first thing that you tackle, because it's like your niche, and your branding is, in my opinion, like your compass or your anchor, which allows you to go and experiment a lot more, but still be able to come back to what makes you. So yeah.
So the friend who sent me your profile, I believe that's what he was referring to was your brand, because he said he really liked the way that your videos looked. Please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but when you say branding as a content creator, like I understand branding from, you know, website and, you know, still imagery and stuff like that, just from like a visual and aesthetic. When you go into like videos, are you talking about just a consistency of the look there, a consistency of the way the videos are formatted? What encompasses branding when it comes to content creation as a video person? A video person. You know what I'm
As
trying to say.
video, yeah.
It's early. Okay. I haven't, man, this is my first cup of coffee. I'm still trying to figure out what's happening right now. Forgive me.
No, I get that. This entire thing, that's like a coffee corner. So I'm right there
I
with
know.
you.
I cheers. Cheers. But
Cheers.
branding,
Yes.
branding for video. What do you mean by that?
I'd say it's still a lot of the different elements, from the visual aspect of it to the format of your videos, how you present, like how you put your videos together, to the editing. There's a lot. So I'm now known for like a more dark vibe, as what you've mentioned, also with like the orange stuff, because that's
Yeah.
something that I think is pleasing, and I like it, and so I incorporate that into my videos. I think my editing also. So a creator's,
Yeah.
or the pacing definitely also contributes to the branding of the creator as a whole. So I don't really have any super professional background in marketing, but I would like to say it's kind of similar, I guess. So if you're a business, the branding that you think about, and the elements that you highlight for your businesses to present your branding is also the same,
Yeah.
sort of, for being a creator.
You know, I would argue, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, your opening beats on your videos. When I was referencing earlier that you have a different vibe than other creators, that's the thing that stood out to me the most. This is you at the beginning of the videos. You're just like, so now what we're told in, you know, content creation courses and all these gurus is they're like, get to the point. That first 3 seconds is everything, the hook. And you're like, literally, you're like, what's up, y'all? Like, you just go straight, but it works. And I'm like, how refreshing is it to see a short form video content creator like say F you to the hook people, where you're not, you breathe, you maybe have a pause and stuff like that. And I think it's so interesting. And then you look at it, the videos, and they're working. Is that a branding thing, or have you learned something about hooks that we don't know?
Okay, first off, thank you, because I'm also right there with, I'm such a nerd when it comes to analytics, and then learning about like hooks and stuff.
Oh, let's.
Yeah, but and I also believe that. I'm also along with everybody else who's like, no, you gotta go and hook, and just like 3 seconds, everybody needs to know. That particular video that I made, or at least the one that's top 3 mistakes beginners make, and it's me just sitting on the floor eating like a cookie. That is one of those moments wherein I was like, I overthunk everything so much that I was like, if I don't make this video, it's never gonna get made. So F it. I have to practice what I preach, which is don't let the fear the best of you, and just put it out, because you can always change it, or you can always update it after the fact. But if you don't put it out, then you don't get feedback. But if you put it out, then you know if it worked, or if it doesn't, and you can just like redo that. So that
Yeah.
particular video, I was like, I know I have something to say, and I've been sitting on this idea for about 6 months, because I was
Good
like, this is
idea.
I think a lot of people need to hear this, but how do I optimize it so that it gets to a lot more people? And it ended up with me just putting it on the shelf or sitting on it for 6 months. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna do it, and I'll set the fear aside. I'll just do it the way that I will. I didn't even set up lights. I just filmed it, and I was like, I need a cookie to get through making this video, so that's why the cookie was there. I needed the chocolate for comfort. And it was like the world slapped me on the face, and it's like, see, if you stop overthinking it does work. So it's actually also really great to hear that that's how you received it, like that video, because now it just reinforces that, like the lesson that I've been trying to remember
Yeah.
also as a creator. So yeah.
But you do that, and I feel like you do that in a lot of your videos where you take a moment and you have a beat at the beginning. And I just don't know if that's intentional or not. There's a beat there, and it seems unrushed. You seem very calm. You seem like, I don't even give a rat's ass if you like this or not. Like, here's something I think. You know what I mean? And it's so, I can feel like this unattachment where you don't need me to like it. So it makes me like it. Do you see what I'm saying? And so again, I don't
Yeah.
know if that's intentional, but I think it's a very interesting possible brand for you and breaks the mold of what we think we need to be doing as creators, because I'm like you. I compare myself where it's like things need to be like boop, 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 and then a dragon comes out and then
Yeah.
Beyonce's there and then you know what I mean? Like, but you're so chill and it's working. And I don't know. I think it's very encouraging to think about unconventional approaches to content that doesn't all have to be the same way.
I mean, I'd like to say when I first started doing it, it was definitely not intentional. I was just
Mm.
tired and done with trying to keep up with all of the fast-paced editing, and I was like, I F it. I just want to try with this. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And but then after that worked, I experimented a little bit more with, well, what if I am not so uptight with trying to optimize for
Mm.
retention? What if I just slow down? And yeah. So the more recent videos, they're a little bit slower at least, but I still feel the pull, especially when I consume a lot of content that's super fast paced.
Yeah.
I still feel the pull of maybe I should optimize, but I do try. And right now I'm actually on like a 2-week break, but I'm also planning to put out content that's really different from, well, I'd like to say different from what I've been putting out. So a lot of my existing content now is like knowledge based, and it's a
Mm.
lot of teaching people and giving information. And I kind of want to experiment more with building a deeper relationship and kind of bringing all the content stuff down to like a more human connection, wherein, hey, how are you, and just
Mm.
something like that. Yeah.
Is it scary going from something you know that's working to something you don't know that's going to work?
Oh yeah, super scary. I remember talking to some like bigger creators before, and something that stuck to me that they said was that the best place that you can be as a creator is when you're first starting out. It's like less than 10,000, because the bigger you are, the scarier it is to try and experiment and be true to yourself,
Yeah.
especially when you kind of know what things work and things don't.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to get back to that. I'll circle back to that in a second. But to get there, we got to go here real quick. The content that you know that you've been making that's worked, it hasn't all been the exact same format. Like my content is the exact same format. It's like, here's what Beyonce said. Here's what Jack Canfield said. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You are in different rooms. You're outside sometimes. You move around quite a bit, and not one video is exactly the same, but there is that brand there, and it is very consistent. So how have you changed your videos up so drastically as far as where they're at and how you film them while maintaining a consistent brand? What are you looking for to tie everything together?
For me, the one thing that ties everything together, at least for my videos, would be how I edit them. I don't think it's something that's in your face. Like, it's not like a visual cue, right? But the way that I edit my videos is I don't really have a lot of pauses. So if you like, I guess, watch it a couple of times, when I edit it, it's always like a J cut, an L cut, or something. And I feel like inadvertently the feel is
Can you
there.
tell me a J cut and an L cut just for bring
Right.
it a little
So
bit?
it's
Listen,
it's
we're newbies here, okay? You guys, a J cut, L cut, the slither effect. I mean, come on.
Right. So just think of it as overlapping clips. So either the video from video A, it continues while the audio from video B is already coming in,
Oh, is that the J or the
or
L?
I think that's the J. But filmmakers will probably roast me if I'm wrong, so we'll find out in the comments section. And then the inverse of that would be the L.
Got it. Okay, continue. So you're editing. Your editing is what makes you stand out.
Yeah, so editing is one point, and another one would be, I think, the structure in some way. So I still try my best to follow like a structure of in my script. There's always like the hook, and then the act one, act two, act three, and then the call to action if ever. And I like looping things. I always think it's fun. And it's either, if it's something informative, it's 3 points. If it's more of like a story, then it's giving you the setup and then all that stuff to like summarize. For the videos that are outside or inside the house, it's really a mix of just changing angles a lot. And then if I'm doing it as like just a talking head and I don't change angles, it's usually what's consistent would be like my background.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The looping thing, I have failed miserably at looping a video. I think those are so cool in the way people do it, where you don't even know that it looped again and you're watching it for the fourth time and you're like, oh my God, these people are good. How do you freaking do that? Like, give me some very, very beginner tips, because I got to send you some of my times I've tried looping. Like, it's painful. It's literally painful. How do you do it correctly?
Right, I got you. Okay, so one thing that I figured out is when you record your video, you have to say the, I don't know what you call it, but I'm dubbing it as like the connector word or phrase.
Okay.
You know, like
Yeah.
the that's why, and then this, or so, or and that's where you cut like the to make it loop. But you, when you record like the talking head, or when you record the video, you have to say the end along with the first line
Again.
again.
And so at the end of it, I'm saying the end in the first line again.
Yes. So I'll give you an example. Right. It's like, and that's why here are three things, or like, and that's why you'll want this new charger because this, and that's why you'll want this new charger. And that's why you'll want this new charger. You want to record that in like one take, so that continuity is there, and then you just cut it. And like a little trick that I do is when I deliver that line, for example, my last line is, it's super small, and that's why you'll want this new charger. For example, that's the line, right? It's super small, and that's why you'll want this new charger. When I make that video, I put like one breath in between that's why and you'll want this new video. And that's where I cut.
That's where you
So that, yeah. And
that
then you
was a
bookend
freaking
it.
hot tip, man.
I downloaded a lot of looping videos that I really liked, and then I was just like frame by frame. I'm like, this is so cool. And then I kind of broke it down that.
That goes back to you have to put in so much hours and be obsessed with this process. I'm really convinced that people who want to be content creators are really the modern day traditional filmmakers and people in the entertainment space and all of that. Like, this is that, in the same dedication that people have had to just build their careers in the traditional entertainment industry is the same dedication that the next wave of creators are going to be, because this is the new media, and it's just as serious as wanting to go make a film in Hollywood. Little dramatic, but I think it's true.
I agree.
Good.
That's true.
Good. Glad you agree, because I don't want to argue with you today, but I will. Just joking. All right, here's a couple of technical things I want to get into. I was curious, what are some small things with sound that drive you crazy as a professional in that world, and when you're looking at content creators? Now, I know you mentioned just, having the mic close to your face, that's one thing, but is there anything for people who maybe are good at creating content, but they could really get better with their sound by doing this one thing? What would that be?
Being careful of the volume, or the more technical term is the levels, and being careful with reverb or the echo that people hear.
Can't you
So
just resound that? Can't you put that in AI and fix it?
now you can. Now you can, to be
I'm trying to
fair.
get that cheat code, okay?
Yeah, now you can, most definitely. But so when it's too close to your mouth, you get like the plosives, right? And then it's
Mhm.
either you get the plosives or it's distorted because it's too loud and the mic is too sensitive. So little things like that, or it's the complete opposite of either they're using the built-in microphone on their phones or cameras,
Mhm.
and or their microphone is too far and you just get too much reverb or echo around. So those are like the little pet peeves that I have, because I feel like it's at this point, or at least this day and age, it's super easy to fix.
Yeah.
So
Stop excuses, people. Get it together. What about zooming? I don't know why I wrote this down, but I think
yeah.
you're just really good at this. And I've been very curious lately, getting into more of the psychology behind like the cinematography, when you zoom in, when you zoom out, like the choices you make there. Because when I first started, I was just like cutting, zoom in, just because I wanted stimulus. But now I'm like, oh, yo, there's an art to this. How do you approach zooming when you
Mm.
zoom or zoom out?
So when I edit my videos, and I just want to like preface this by saying I don't have any professional formal training in filmmaking and
Oh,
cinematography.
stop. Who gives a
Um,
poop?
but zooming in and zooming out, if you notice in my videos also, like every time I have a cut, there's just slow like zooming in or just slow zooming out. And it's
Always.
really, yeah, all and the basis of that is I just want movement, so that there's like it's barely there, but then if you really pay attention, you'll find that it's there. But I feel like it makes a lot of difference in terms of, and I cannot articulate this in words because I don't have the experience for it, but it just feels more, I guess, for retention also,
Yeah.
maybe. And another thing is I zoom as like a hack. So if I make a cut, zoom to hide the cut, or zoom to highlight a point of whatever I'm
Mm,
saying. Yeah. So I use zooms that way, at least.
good. Zoom, zoom, zoom. How do we elevate our videos, the experience in our videos, to another level? Meaning, we have the script, it's good. Visually, audibly, how do we elevate what we're trying to say without taking away from what we're saying because it's too much? Like, where's that line? How do you gauge that?
Good question.
I had a friend the other day who had a killer video content wise. Like the content, the words on the paper were bomb, absolutely bomb. Then the video was so wild that it's like you couldn't even, the words were gone. And I'm like, and I'm really struggling with this with myself editing stuff. Like, where's the balance between I'm going to elevate this through editing and through visual versus making it a dopamine rush where I need therapy after
Mm,
watching this. You know what I mean?
yeah. I feel like there's really no one answer for it, but if there's a tip that any creator out there can at least try, I call it the over the shoulder test. So if
I
your
love this
video,
test. This is interesting.
yeah, so the idea of like the over the shoulder test is, imagine you're like at the subway or like in a train or wherever, right? And you're you're there in line, probably waiting to at a fast food, right? And then you're waiting for your turn, and then somebody in front of you is watching a video with headphones on, and you kind of see it over their shoulder, and there's really only two things that can happen: is one, it's boring and you don't watch, or the other is it's interesting enough even though you don't hear the sound and you keep watching. So the over the shoulder test is pretty much, can you sustain the attention of whoever is watching if they watch it over someone's shoulder, or if they watch it without audio. If you start with the base of the video and then you just add elements to get it to the point of, okay, it's interesting enough, then that's where I would stop, and that would eliminate the whole super dopamine rush, everything happening in your face kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. What's been your approach? I know you're transitioning right now. What's been your approach as far as how many videos you're putting out? Do you have like a strict cadence that you follow, or are you more of a, when it hits you and when it's right, you publish?
Oh man, I really, 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 really want to say that I have a schedule that I follow and I'm consistent and I have cadence. I do not. I try. I just try to show up. And I used to beat myself up for this, that I'm like, come on, somebody out there who's not even doing this full time is doing it every single day and you're not showing up. And then now I'm like, as long as I can, I will show up. And I cannot say when. But I still try. I still try to at least one video, if not one video, at least one post per week. So yeah.
Now, going into this next season for you, and I'm glad I've talked to you right now at this time before it started, because I see like you have all this experience and the basis of your voice and who you are, and you have followers now, and here you are, and then here you are in this transition time where you're going to be a newbie again and back to the beginning. I mean, I know you're transferring stuff over, but it's new, and it's cool to talk to you at this point, because I feel like a lot of creators are either there or experiencing that shift where it's like transferring one thing I understand into a new medium. So I'm curious how you're approaching it. You said you wanted to go more personal, kind of more life stuff. Countering that with high production is interesting. And I think about this a lot because I'm trying to get more polished and better at my production, but I've been nervous that I'm taking the humanity out of it and people don't get to know who I am because I'm using a DLSR and I'm heavily editing everything and my makeup's on and all that stuff. Are you going to let go of the production side to be more human, or do you think that doesn't even freaking matter?
To a certain degree, I think it doesn't even matter. I think at this point, it's to each his own. And I would say that to me, it does matter to a certain degree, mainly because I want to make things that I am proud of and something that I look at and I'm like, yeah, this is good enough for me. And what goes into that is trying to learn more about cinematography, because I want to try to bridge the gap between what I'm capable of now to what I want to realize in terms of how I want my videos to look like. So I don't know, but definitely experimenting is something that I will be doing. And that's like the best that I can say when it comes to the production value. Yeah.
Are you going to keep the same audience creators, or are you going to go broader?
I think with this one, I'm still definitely going to keep creating content that I'm making. I'm just going to be injecting something that's more personal, something that's more different, mainly because I'm operating off of respecting, and this is something that I try to teach also to like other creators, is that you have to first look at like the people who have decided to follow you, and then you have to acknowledge that they followed you, so you have to respect that decision of them following you. And so with that, it's really more about honoring the current people or current followers that I have by still giving them what I've essentially promised them from like the videos that I've made, while just injecting a little bit more of me. So it's really going back to like one for them, one for me. So not it's not to be super different, I guess.
One for them, one for you. I like you put the emphasis on the people who already followed you, because to your earlier point about wanting followers as creators, it's like this never-ending thing of new people following you, new audiences, etc. And the loyalty and awareness and empathy to the people who are currently following you, I think, is something that's so easily overlooked. And I know I've done that myself, where it's like, okay, cool, I have this community over here, but I want more, as opposed to what you just said. Am I giving them what they wanted when they followed me? When you're talking with creators, you're either in an in-person workshop, people going through your course, whatever. What is something that gets you so hot and passionate out of anything you talk about?
Ooh, niche and data analytics.
Tell me more.
So I think like niche is something I'm super passionate about when I talk to creators, is because it's very near to me, or at least it's something that is important to me because it's part of like my origin story, I guess. So back then I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I would listen to anybody because my goals were all out of whack and I would try everything. And then through time I learned that, oh, you do have to dive deeper into figuring out first. So you have to look inward first and all that stuff, and figure out what it is that you really want in order for that to translate to everything else, like your content and all that stuff. So niche and analytics and data, because I think there are a lot of people who focus on numbers, but it's rooted in like, oh, I want a lot of followers, a lot of this and a lot of that, which is why they go and look at the numbers, and then they get lost in the algorithm, right? But then it's also balancing it and realizing that the algorithm is essentially the audience, which is people. And so I'm very passionate about helping creators kind of snap out of the whole numbers game and realize that when you say that, oh, you know, the algorithm hates me, it's really just an excuse.
You're like,
to
people hate you.
Yeah, no, but it's like it's an excuse
I was
to
waiting for
but essentially, right? It's an excuse to be like, oh, you know what? I'm putting out good content, so the algorithm must hate me, or the algorithm gods must not like me. But it's really just realizing that the ones who are consuming your content are people, and if it's not resonating with them, then it must be something that you're doing, and it should be a signal to go back to the drawing board instead of just like waving it off by saying, oh, the algorithm hates me, or I'm like shadow banned or something. So I just think that that's an excuse to actually figuring out what else you can do to make it better.
Word. You know, you said the niche thing, which every single one of us, I guarantee you, there's not one person listening who's not cringing when you say that word, because creatives, we want to be a lot of things, and we're multifaceted, and we have imaginations, and we're curious, and it feels so restrictive. But we all know that it's your broccoli or spinach. You need to eat it and deal with it because it's good for you. I'm curious how you've approached defining your niche when, even though creatives and creators is a niche, it's still a pretty broad one. And I'm selfishly asking this because I feel like my audience is creators too. And I'm like, is that narrow enough? You know, how have you conceptualized your niche when creators are like breeding and multiplying every single day?
First off, I do want to say though that I agree. Like as creatives, we were drawn to like, don't put me in a box, you know? There's so many things to try. But I would argue that once you figure out what your niche is, then it's easier for you to actually go broad in some way and reach other people. without losing yourself. And I always kind of say it's like when you're growing up and if you don't try, like as a teenager, if you're not trying things, then it takes you a really long time to figure out what are the things that you like and you don't like, what are the things that work for you and don't work for you. And the fastest way for you to actually know yourself is to try as many things as possible. And I think that's also true when it comes to being a creator. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but that's how I
Sure.
approach niche
Sure.
in general.
What is the most unconventional, weird ass, against the grain thing that you believe with all of your heart when it comes to content creation that most people would disagree with you about, but you would freaking die on that hill? Something weird.
Something weird, man. I feel like there's a lot. I'm like, I feel like I'm overthinking this. Right. So the weirdest thing would probably be, I don't know. I feel like the niche thing, but I also feel like there's a big demographic that's like, yeah, that's correct. You should be like, you should nail down your niche. But then there's also like a really big demographic that's like, no, you should go broad because it's so hard. The weirdest one would be, okay, there's two. Maybe there's two. It's slowing down. Like all of like the fast pace, you need to overwhelm and get people's attention and get them through optimizing hooks and everything and all that. I think that's something that is not necessarily true because it's harder to sustain if it's all eye candy and it's all like stimulation as opposed to approaching it in a more slow way and a more down to earth and just like connection kind of way. That's one. But the other one would be, it's more of like a general thing. Parameters combat paralysis. That's more like I stumbled upon that concept when I found myself being super stuck with everything. And it goes against the grain of being a creator because, like what you said, as a creator or a creative, like don't put me in a box and don't put like these parameters and stuff. But I now believe that when you have too many things to consider, you end up in analysis paralysis. And so when you put certain parameters, it makes things move or easier. It makes things easier. And I'll give you an example, which is when you find yourself like you're having a hard time to put out a piece of content, and it might be because you don't have enough time. Then put parameters such as, okay, I can only make this video in the next 1 hour, and whatever I finish in that hour, it's as good as done. And it's setting parameters that are like that. Or, for example, you're not quite sure as to how to approach dealing with your content and what kind of content to make because you feel like, oh, I want to talk about this and this and this and this. And there's so many of me that I want to share to the world that it's hard for you to pick one. Then that's like a moment wherein putting parameters would be very, very helpful. And it's like making a deal with yourself. It's like, no, it's not that you're putting yourself into a box. It's that you're picking 3 things that really matter to you and then starting there. It never means that because you chose this, then you're trading off this. It just means you're starting with this. And then if you find that you don't like this, then you can always move to this. Something like that.
Word. So good. So good. Amen. Hallelujah. I got one final question for you, but where would you like to direct our listeners to if they need some more of Chu in their life?
Oh, yeah. So I am everywhere pretty much as Bea Chu TV, except X because Bea Chu TV has been taken. So it's Bea Chu _TV. But yeah, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, trying to be on YouTube for more longer form content.
That's another beast, man. That's another beast. Very last question. What is something you are deeply questioning right now that you do not have the answer to?
Ooh, dang. The serious thing would be, man, it's so hard to articulate. It's like it's right there, but it's so hard to like articulate it. How are you sure that who you are trying to be right now is who you actually want to be?
Ooh, Lord Jesus.
Yeah, like, and how do you make it make sense wherein it's worth taking the time to figure out by going down that path? I don't know if that made sense. It's like, how do you know you're not wasting your time? going down that path.
We don't.
Mm.
No, man. But I mean, my Lord Jesus, I feel that in my bones. That is something I've been journaling since I was a little girl. I have a journal for every single year, and I go back and I reread my journals all the time because I love just reflecting, you know. And I think the theme throughout all of them has been, well, one's like, why do you eat so many snacks? Like that happens throughout all my journals. But two is, who do I want to be? And am I being that person? That has been like the through line since I was like 14. And I'm just wondering, I'm 37 now. I'm like, am I always going to wonder this? Or is this just a human thing? So all that to say, I feel you. And I don't think there's anybody listening who doesn't wrestle with that. Damn. Well, now I got to start my day on that deep ass note. I'm going to be thinking about that forever.
Good morning.
Good morning. Listen, it was a joy connecting with you. Thank you for your time today. I wish you the very, very best. Your content is awesome. It's refreshing. It's different. It's cool. And I can't wait to see where you go from here.
Likewise. Thank you so much.